when you make a list of the best players in the sport, there's not too many names you get to before Kawhi Leonard, yes?
Absolutely. I mean, and this may sound crazy, but Kawhi Leonard reminds me of Michael Jordan.
And then to top it off, you look at this season alone, right? Kawhi Leonard gets hurt, he goes down. Most of the time when you see a guy go down and your team is in the heat of the battle and they're in the playoffs, they not in the suite wiggling their toes, eating steak and shrimp. They down there on the bench encouraging their teammates.
And I have said, if Kawhi Leonard in 2.5, 3 months is holding up a trophy, is holding up the championship trophy, he's a top 10 player in the league all time. I'm going to say it today. He's a top 5 player. He's a top 5 player of all time.
Steve Ballmer and the Los Angeles Clippers should force Kawhi Leonard to retire. I'm done. He needs to go home. Okay? It's over.
All right, man. This summer really made me realize how strange of a legacy the great Kawhi Leonard actually has. 4 years ago, I did a video basically with this exact same theme about Kawhi, and 4 years later, his legacy has somehow gotten even more confusing. We recently just witnessed the Olympics where Team USA brought home the gold, and this one was special because it had so much aura. LeBron named this team the Avengers, and it felt that way because the league's big three for the past decade all came together and agreed to get this one mission done one last time, and that they did. But initially, this was supposed to be the big four doing this, but right on time, Kawhi got hurt and we got Derek White instead. Now, it never really made that much sense for Kawhi to even play to begin with because we know he needs his rest. But this big four would have been special truly because these are the four that dominated our era of hoops. If you look at the 2010s, the only players that have multiple championships in that decade is LeBron with 3, Steph with 3, and KD and Kawhi share 2. Not to mention, he beat LeBron and Steph in the process of getting those rings. Kawhi's legacy should hold way more weight than it does, but it just feels like it doesn't. One thing about all-time greats and how they become all-time greats is they normally have the numbers, the all-time numbers to some extent to enhance their legacy. Kevin Durant, even through all of his injuries, he's 10th currently in all-time scoring, and I believe he can retire in that top 5 spot. Stephen Curry, the greatest shooter ever, he's way ahead of anybody with the most threes in the history of the sport, and he damn near has 9 of the top 20 three-point shooting seasons ever. I mean, his is just undeniable. And LeBron, numbers-wise, all-time legacy-wise, we don't even have to speak on it. My point is, looking back at Kawhi's legacy 20 years from now is going to be the strangest thing ever because he doesn't have any of this. As we speak right now, do you know where Kawhi, one of the greatest pure 3-level scorers that I've ever seen, do you know where he ranks in all-time scoring? He's 204th. He's actually going to have one of those legacies where you just had to be there in real time to truly appreciate how great he really was. Stephen A. Smith recently said something about Kawhi that can sound excessive, and it probably was, but it does hold some weight, and I'll explain.
The brother is a big-time basketball player. Jay, this is not a discussion about his skills and how elite he is. This is the worst superstar. I can make a case this is the worst superstar in the history of sports. He is a nightmare.
I'll shortly get to the good/confusing part of Kawhi, but I really want to break down this comment. Calling Kawhi the worst superstar ever sounds strange, illogical, and damn near like a paradox because in one breath you're calling him a superstar, and that's not given to just anybody, but you're calling him the worst one yet. But one thing I noticed about Kawhi's legacy when you really dive into it is how consistently unreliable he's been in some of his team's biggest moments, and that does favor Stephen A's point. Even if you look at his championships and how great he may have been in those championships, his performances were really unexpected and honestly surprising. In 2014 when they won, Kawhi wasn't even drafted to really be an offensive force. In his draft reports, one of his biggest weaknesses was him not really having a true, reliable offensive skill set. He worked extremely hard with San Antonio's coach Chip Engelland, perfected his shot, and became the Kawhi that we know now. But prior to that finals, nobody really expected Kawhi to be the finals MVP, in which he was and he deserved, but he did it kind of quietly and out of nowhere. To me, kind of the same thing in 2019 When Kawhi wanted out from San Antonio, let's be real, they were petty and they were trying to punish him. They sent him way to Canada. That was not on his list. Nobody really expected Toronto to win that championship. In fact, more people were talking about what he was going to do afterwards. He just happened to have one of the most special playoff runs that I can remember, and we kind of forgot how great Kawhi truly was. He reminded us in the most Kawhi way possible. But what about when expectations were truly there? When he's the known superstar, he's favored, and he's picked to win. Unfortunately, that's when Kawhi's been the most unreliable. It really sucks because sometimes it's really out of your control. But the best ability is always going to be availability, and that's never really been his forte. When Kawhi was that known dude, established himself in 2016-2017, won back-to-back DPOYs, and at this point was easily a top 5 player in the sport. In those back-to-back years with healthy young Kawhi, look at how dominant San Antonio truly was. They were only second to Golden State with wins, and they were the only 2 teams well into the thousands as far as point differential. They were dominant. You can see why Coach Pop was damn near chasing Kawhi around the country to keep this man on his team. When he's there and healthy, he wins. But of course, when you're playing that well, that raises your team's expectations. That gets your fans' hopes up. You really can't do that with Kawhi. In 2017, in which was supposed to be the showdown of the West, the 2 best teams in the West, Zaza hurt Kawhi, and that's not his fault at all. But unfortunately, it does add to his legacy of never being there when needed most. If this was like a one-off incident, it would be different, but for Kawhi, it's really a pattern. San Antonio predictably got swept. The following year, Kawhi's last year with the Spurs, he was basically gone for that whole season. That was the Spurs' last real year to really contend, because afterwards Tony was gone, and so was Manu, and even so was Kawhi. The Clippers saga with Kawhi is really the error that favors Stephen A's point. Let's be real. Paul George, he's in Philly now, not because of Steve Ballmer, not really because of a contract dispute. To me, it's none of that. It's because Kawhi Leonard just couldn't stay healthy. The Clippers being the Clippers, they made the mistake and extended Kawhi early for some odd reason, and they didn't want to double down and keep both of them. Why? Because they've proven they're not reliable, and it's mainly because Kawhi can't stay healthy. Again, I don't understand the Kawhi thing first, but why would Steve Ballmer face second apron penalties for a duo that's proven they can't win? Kawhi is not healthy enough. In 2020, most people, including myself, picked the Clippers to win it all. And no, it wasn't mainly because of how good Paul George was coming off an MVP year. It wasn't because of how deep the Clippers was. It wasn't because of Doc Rivers, none of that. It was mainly because Kawhi Leonard looked like the best player on the planet at that time. He's the one that made the Clippers championship opportunity look realistic. But in the bubble, their best chance to actually win a championship, they blew a 3-1 lead, and Kawhi just wasn't good in that Game 7. It wasn't just him, but he's the best player, and heavy is the head that wears the crown. Now, Kawhi underperforming hasn't really been the norm. In fact, that was really a rarity because Kawhi's play, that's never really been the problem. But it all ties back to the one point of Kawhi not really being reliable when the expectations are there. In 2021, another one of their best chances to actually win. It was a shortened season, the weakest competition in the West in years. And Kawhi played amazing, especially against Dallas when they were down 0-2. But Kawhi's body eventually broke down, and he missed their franchise's sole conference finals appearance. In the last 2 years, Kawhi's missed 7 of their last 11 playoff games. If you take out that Toronto run, which again was amazing, since 2017, Kawhi's missed 24 of his possible 74 playoff games. His teams, they've lost 16 of those 24 games without him, and they're 4 games above 500 with him. They win when he's there. And this perfectly segues into the confusing part of what's going to be Kawhi's legacy when he's there and how great he is when he's there. When healthy, Kawhi is undoubtedly one of the best players I've ever seen. Let's not forget, he's one of 8 perimeter players to win the Defensive Player of the Year, and he did it back-to-back. That's a big award for some odd reason. Also, he was the second player before LeBron did it right after him to win Finals MVP in 2 different conferences. And in the window in which he actually became a superstar, I'll take out last playoffs because he was visibly hurt and he only played 2 games. But in that window, look at where he ranks as far as points per game. Look at who he's behind, the other forward gods of our generation. And he plays less minutes and he's been more efficient. Literally every single year in this window, in his prime window, in the playoffs, and this is a true testament to how great you really are, his numbers always significantly increase. In elimination games, again, if you want to see how great a player is when it really matters, these are the top 5 scorers in that spot. I know I said earlier, Kawhi doesn't really have the all-time numbers to truly back up how great he is, but he definitely has the winning numbers and the when it matters most numbers. If you look at players in the history of the league that wins the most in the amount of games that Kawhi has played, he's really only behind Magic, Larry, and Magic's teammate Michael Cooper. No disrespect to Michael Cooper, but he played a lot of games with Magic, so that helps. That's who he's behind. I know he's played and been a part of great teams, but he's a proven winner. Since he joined the league, he still has the highest win percentage of any player. Even in the playoffs, amongst players that plays real minutes and they've played his amount of games, Kawhi is really only behind the Warriors dynasty and LeBron as far as win percentage. Lastly, and this really emphasizes Kawhi's greatness when he's there. Since 2016, Kawhi's 5th in 30-point playoff games. Now, out of everybody in that top 5, look at how many games he's actually played in total in comparison to the rest. This man is truly great when he's there. The problem has always been that last part, when he's there. In conclusion, I think Kawhi is going to have one of the more confusing legacies that we've ever seen. And honestly, I think he's one of the biggest what ifs ever. I know we don't put him in that category because we've seen him actually win, but how much more could he have won had he stayed a little bit healthier? If you guys like this video, let me know in the comment section how you feel about Kawhi's legacy. I mean, he did beat Steph and LeBron in the finals. Like, that's not many people can say that. Follow my social media sites, turn on post notifications, do all that great stuff, guys. And until next time, as always, stay tuned.